coastal communities. Call the question on that. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That motion is carried. I still, Councillor Haynes, yeah, I still feel like we're not, I won't say we're not doing enough. It just seems like there's got to be something that can be done in the short term. And I know this council has looked at this issue before, and it's happened before. I can certainly, go see the MPs and the MLAs and try to make a big issue out of this, or try to, I can't get on a Coast Guard boat myself, but something's got to be done. Councillor Haynes?
The one solution that was explained to me, and if you go down to the marina, you could look out, and there's boats anchored over here, but they're not in between the yellow buoys, because that is a navigational alley. So the advice I had from people who live this for their life, keeping that marina free, is to explore navigational alley as a tool to prevent people anchoring in the gorge waterway, because navigation trumps anchorage. You can imagine the big sea lanes with all these tankers going through them. You can't anchor in them. Now, we would be applying it in a different waterway, but the statutes are that navigation trumps anchorage. So the suggestion was made, if you want to have a solution to stopping them permanently without the 72-hour option to stay there and float around and then change their anchor, that's an approach. But it's painstaking and long-term, and it won't happen tomorrow. But if you want to prepare for 4 or 5 years out from now, that would be an option. So I put a motion to the floor: should we explore a navigational alley as a long-term solution to the liveables on the gorge?
Just a question to our administrator. If it's derelict in the navigable area, then what happens?
If it's derelict in the navigable area, the Coast Guard, they would remove it, and they would do that very quickly.
Right. So what do you
That
suggest?
would take place right now. You don't need that regulation to do that.
It's not a navigational alley.
Yes, it is. If the boat there is blocking navigation, then the federal government will act currently to remove it. The problem with this particular case is it's not deemed to be. I just, not to sort of belabor this, and I know it's difficult, but there is something that can be done, and these are things that we are looking at. But let me just read you from the Act. This is how we're looking at it right now. It's under the Navigation Protection Act. If any vessel or wreck is sunk partially lying ashore, grounded or abandoned in a scheduled waterway, which the gorge is, other than minor waters, Transport Canada may authorize any person to remove the vessel or part of it on their own benefit, but only after the person giving the registered owner the ownership 30 days notice, going through advertising, and a number of other issues. If we get to the point and where we have to take that action, then Saanich would be in a position to make an application under the Navigation Act, basically to take possession of that, and we would go through the required steps that they have, but it's not quick. It does take time. It is involved advertising. And at the outcome of that, then we would be authorized to remove at taxpayers' expense any boat that's there.
Would an individual have the same ability?
Yes, Mr. Warden, there they would.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Barlow.
So last year, Squamish passed at the Lower Mainland, same as our ABICC. Therefore, be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities strongly encourage federal and provincial governments to immediately implement a derelict vessel removal program modeled after the Washington State program, and to designate the Canada Coast Guard as the receiver of wrecked vehicles in the case of every abandoned or derelict vessel in the waters of coastal BC. And that was passed. Many motions. I think maybe the best idea is with the new federal government, there might be opportunities to push it again, but many motions from many jurisdictions on the water.
All right, thank you. So just quickly back to the administrator. The last thing that I heard was that there is an ability to move the boat, providing contacting the owner, advertising a notification, and then 30 days.
That's correct. Once an application is made under the Navigation Act to the federal government, that's correct.
Okay. Sorry. So, I would ask that somebody put a motion forward then to deal with this boat.
So I'll put a motion that we send the correspondence to initiate that process, that we run the advertisement, and we lead this process forward such that 30 days after implementing all the correct documentation, that boat could be removed and it would be at taxpayers' expense. If there's a seconder, I'll talk to her.
Seconded by Councillor Plant. Discussion? To motivate Councillor Haynes?
So the other option is just to leave it there, but this will have probably something 40 days to try and find the owner and see if we can convince the owner to remove it, or if he needs assistance to remove it. And for that, I believe there's somebody in the room. Scott, you know, you've met him. Can you help us find that owner? And we'll go the community route as well.
Councillor Clark?
Thank you. Just a brief question, Mr. Mayor, through you to staff. Do we have an approximate cost of what this would cost? I've seen previous examples of this costing around $7,000. Is there an estimate that you could provide?
That's a great question.
Mr. Mayor, I really can't at this point. We're talking about access, moving the boat to a landfill. And of course, we need to go through, and the Canada Shipping Act identifies vessels in terms of wrecks, shipwrecks, derelict boats, and there are different rules for each of these. It gets even more complicated. So once we go through that process, we can certainly get an estimate of cost. I can't give it to you right now because there's various things that are there. But clearly, if this boat is not a wreck and it does have some value, and the photographs that I have seen indicate it does, then we would hope that the owner would take some action to remove that because it does seem to have some value.
Thank you. I will move an amendment then to the motion that says, the flavor of it is up to $5,000, and if it's above $5,000 to come back for council for further consideration. And that would be an amendment. If people are willing to support, I would not speak towards it. If it can be considered friendly, but I think it's pretty significant.
I think you're a friendly kind of guy, Colin. We'll take it friendly.
Any more discussion? I think the intent here is that we try to do something. I think. Councillor Bryce?
I agree. I think the intent is we try to do something. I think we need to sort of start the process. I mean, if starting the process is sort of issuing a letter saying this is what we intend to do and we're attempting to try and find the owner and so on, I think that it should be reported back to us on what progress is before we start getting cranes and whatnot. The project that we got into a few years ago, I mean, we spent $7,000, and that was like just smaller boats thrown up on the beach, easy access. It wasn't a big marine salvage operation. So you can start going through some money before long, and so I think, you know, let's start it. Let's keep a watching brief, ask the administrator to keep us apprised, and we can make responsible decisions along the way. Hopefully this owner can be enticed to move it along.
Thank you. Our Administrator?
Mr. Mayor, I would just caution you about putting a dollar figure on this, because once you start this process and it's accepted, you own a boat and you're moving that boat, no matter what the cost is, because you now have that boat. So I think that when we start this process, if it goes to full extent, whatever the cost, if we're dealing with putting a cap on it when you own it, I don't think I would advise.
Okay. I wasn't thinking about putting SS Sandwich on it and towing it to Gyro Park. But that may be where it ends up, I don't know. So we have a motion on the floor that had a friendly amendment to it. There's a recommendation for our administrator to go back to the original motion.
So we'll go back to the original motion, which is equally friendly.
All right, now let's just get a clarification from our clerk on what it is that we're voting on.
The motion on the floor is that council send correspondence to initiate the process to remove the derelict boat from the waterway in accordance with the Act, and that would allow us, the municipality, to remove the boat.
All right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
that the motion that is on the floor gives us the essence of where we need to go, but that if we sort of add notes to ourselves, that the staff will be reporting back to us on a basis where they have some information from it, we can make decisions as we go forward. I don't think the motion that's on the floor is, we're not going to take ownership or taking on a financial obligation.
Councillor German?
I'd just like some clarification from the administrator, because what I heard was that if we start this process, we will be taking ownership of the boat. Just to caution the council, if that's the case, you could be sitting with a liability of $50,000, $100,000. Could the minister clarify?
If you start this process and you complete it by going through all the requirements set out in the Navigation Act, the result may be at the end of this that you are awarded custody of that boat, and at that point you have responsibility for whatever actions need to be taken at whatever cost.
Are there checks along the way where you can decide whether or not you want to take ownership, or once you start the process, are you committed?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest once you start the process, you've indicated that a number of things are to happen until it's completed. I suppose you can pull out of that process, but I'm not sure if there's going to be any further information through that process than there is at this point.
Okay, I understand the desire for action, but I would caution council that you could be embarking here on a cost which is unforeseen and could be substantial. And that's somewhat worrisome.
Councillor Rubin?
Thank you very much. I guess the question I would ask, it surely wouldn't take that much effort to find out what it would cost to remove that boat before we went down that road. And I guess my only concern, if the cost is fairly hefty, I could see other boats being washed up on our beaches, so to speak. And we could have a problem. And that's probably the reason why boats are abandoned, because of the cost of removing them.
Mr. Mayor, and of course that gets to the question of whether this would be determined under the legislation as a wreck, or whether in fact it's an abandoned boat, and there's different regulations for both. Yes, we can try and get an estimate of what it would be to remove that boat, and we can ask for that information. Whether you want to do that prior to going down and making the application, or finding out that information first, of course that's strictly up to council whether you wish to do that. I'm assuming here if the motion does pass, what I'm hearing is you'd like staff to start that application process as soon as we can. But we can do this concurrently, and before the time that's completed, we can give you that cost. But you will be going through a series of steps here, and I don't know all of them, but certainly the ones that I've read about here, it will certainly take more than 30 days, but that's the process you've embarked on to eventually have that ship removed and take responsibility of it.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown from the Durham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through staff, the other part that you'll have to look at is how we dispose of it. Because my understanding is fiberglass is maybe not something Heartland would take, but look at how you will dispose of the home.
That's a very good point, and I can tell you, having dealt with this issue prior positions I was at, and I know in this recent situation, there was no government body that was prepared to take action, and the issue was dealt with by a volunteer group who removed the wreck and made arrangements with the regional district to use the landfill at no charge. So all of those issues about disposing of what's there, the fiberglass, what might be on the vessel, whether it has any value, will come to Saanich if we finally make that application and it's concluded that we have ownership of that vessel.
Councillor German?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm loath to start the process without a clear understanding of what kind of liability I'm placing the municipality in. So my own preference, I think I will not vote for the motion in that respect, and that, you know, I really can't sign a blank check on behalf of taxpayers. So my sense would be I would perhaps like a report back from the administrator as to some sort of ballpark figure, if possible, as to what we're looking at before we embark on that process.
Thank you, Councilor. I think we heard from the administrator earlier that it's difficult to estimate. We're dealing with an unknown here. It's a kind of a learning exercise that we have to put some money into. I don't know how this is going to end up. I don't hope that we don't put it on Use Victoria and somebody purchases it and puts it back in the gorge. But anything could happen. It is a learning exercise for us to take on this first boat. And I've had the talks about the liability, and you're just reinforcing the concern, and I don't take it lightly, but perhaps we need to dip our toe in the water, so to speak. Councilor Bryce?
I think we all know where we want to get to, but we're wondering what's the responsible way to do it. And another factor I'm wondering is, should we have a legal or moral obligation to try and officially contact the owner of this particular vessel and indicate that unless we, have this removed or we hear from you or whatever within 30 days, we intend to start the process of blah, blah, blah. And then in the meantime, maybe we can ask the salvage company, what disposal of such a thing would be. But I'm just thinking that for us to sort of interfere, here comes the government, we've heard from the community, they've talked to the owner, but we have not spoken or contacted the owner, know anything about the circumstances or the intentions, so maybe that's the first step.
I think with the responsibility that we need to exercise on this, we're going to have to take the motion forward and take the responsible steps and to ensure ourselves. And then if we don't get an action, then we have to take another step. I think we'll have to make contact and reach out in some way and see what we can do the cheapest way, and then take the next less cheapest way and keep going until we can deal with it. So, I think we reached the end of the discussion here. Matt has a hand up. Councillor Sanders? Yes, I was going to give him a chance to speak. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the comments from Councillor Price are correct. We will try and go through the steps and try and locate the owner, because we do think there's some value looking at this from the photographs that I've seen. And if we're not able to do that, then we would move to this next process of making an application to deal with the issue.
Okay, and I feel that the motion captures that. Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, crossing our fingers. With that, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Councilor Dermott.
I was just wondering if I could ask that in this process, when the solicitor our CAO is contacting the owner, presumably we can find out who he is, and seeing if there's a solution there, that Councillor Bryce's suggestion that we attempt to find out if we can some sort of ballpark figure from a salvage company also be pursued, and that then the CAO will be able to report back to us before initiating the process.
So you're suggesting a motion to
I was
get a
just
salvage company
suggesting
estimate?
suggesting that as direction to the CAO. If it requires a motion, I'll do it.
For clarity, I think it may require a motion, because what I'm hearing at this point is you would like to get an estimate of cost of removal prior to us initiating the application of the federal government.
Thank you. I will move that we ask the CAO during the time period when we are attempting to work with the owner to seek an estimate of cost of removal prior to initiating the process with the federal government.
Second by Councillor Wigglin. Discussion? Councillor Haynes?
Friendly amendment, please. Perhaps the outreach to the owner by our staff could be facilitated with the cooperation of Scott Carbs, who's the Vice President of the Gorge Telecom Community Association and is familiar and has met this individual, and therefore I think would give us a better chance of trying to find him if we work together than if we just go by ourselves.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm not clear on your amendment. The motion is to get an estimate for salvage, and you are...
No, the motion was to get an estimate during the time period when we were trying to contact the owner, and I'm sure staff is aware of the connection to Gorge Telecom.
Okay.
And then to provide that estimate to council prior to initiating the process with the federal government.
Okay, so we'll withdraw that amendment then? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, with that, I'll call the question on Councillor Dermot's motion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed, that motion is carried. All right. Well, this has been probably the most interesting council meeting that we've had to date. I hope we moved it a step forward. A bit dark out there, I can't see any smiles, but let's cross our fingers that we'll get something done in the form of action on this. So with that, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, after recommendations from committees. Madam Clerk, could you introduce the first item,
Yes,
please?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is the recommendation from the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee. The committee is recommending that council consider forming the LGBTQ subcommittee to Healthy Saanich for a one-year trial period. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the 3 recommendations.
I'm very pleased to second this.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, I recognize it's 10:30 in the evening. I think there's kind of 2 ways that I could approach this. One is to tell you the logistical of how this has come about, and 2 is to offer an impassioned plea for your support. That being said, I think the comments that were made tonight supersede anything I could offer, and so I'm going to stick to the former, and if it looks like perhaps a second option is necessary, I will do so. So just for council's reminder and for anybody in the audience, the reason why this has come before council is that any time a subcommittee is asked to be populated by members who are not currently on the advisory committee, council must approve that, and they must also approve any financial or clerical, which are somewhat simultaneous, that cost item. So I'm asking tonight, because of that, I think you've heard the reasons why the committee is needed, and I think you would appreciate that a one-year trial does not impede this council forever if this committee was to be something that was not a success. We would have a mechanism to shut it down. That is not what I hope happens by any stretch of the imagination. So I will, at that, just leave it to that. I believe this is a committee that could do an amazing job of soliciting input from our residents, and that input would be so valuable. And I will hopefully not speak again.
I'm going to speak in support of this, but also give a few extra ideas. First of all, I'm so proud of Colin for bringing this forward, and I'm so proud of the people who spoke this evening. My own family has members of this community, and when Colin emailed me that he was looking for a second, I said the words, "I'd be happy to have that in my house." When we think of Saanich as a family, we need to think of Saanich as a house of families. And the description of what members of our family have had to endure as they move forward in their lives is something that the resources that we're being asked to commit to this are minuscule. We've been asked for $400,000 for electric cars. We've been asked, but we didn't do it, for $27,000 for a governance review. This is a committee that would help enrich lives, it would enrich our community, it would enrich the community of Saanich, and we've heard it may save a life. At my house, we fly the rainbow flag. And people come by and say, "Oh, why are you flying that? You're a member of that?" No. Some of my family are. But I'm flying the flag so that you can see it. So that those who struggle to understand the range of our diversity can start to think about these things. So I am so in support of this. But I can't imagine that we're not going to support it and take it forward. Thank you very much, Colin, and thank you, people who've stood up here today and spoken to it.
Councillor Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to support the motion. Thank Colin Councillor Plant for bringing it forward. About 2 months ago, when the incident happened in Victoria, where the member of the transgender community didn't feel they were welcomed at one of the facilities, I went as chair of our committee to speak to our staff and to just find out what the process would be had that unfolded at one of our facilities. I was so pleased, really so pleased, to talk with senior staff and to just realize how they embraced inclusion, to hear about some of the opportunities already in our recreation centres. And so I think this is going to be received very, very well in Saanich, absolutely. They're already kind of there, but I think what's important is that we not just sort of be doing the right thing, but we actually have some policies around this so that absolutely everybody who works in our facilities would know what our process and our message of inclusion is, and I would expect a committee like this to be able to assist. I know our senior recreation staff are already engaged with members of this community and use them as their own source of their own resource. So this is going to be a good fit, and I'm pleased to support it and wish them well.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will also certainly support this. The experiences detailed by some of the speakers were certainly moving and in many respects sometimes shocking and sometimes depressing. You know, it just takes so long. There is no rationale for rationalization for discrimination on the basis of sexual preference. There just shouldn't be in this day and age. Unfortunately, that's difficult to legislate, and the educational process is very long and often very difficult. We all know that. This has been a concern for most of my adult life, and yet it continues to be so, which is unfortunate. I, like Councillor Bryce, see a lot of opportunity in this in terms of coming out of this process for the municipality itself to establish some procedures and some policies as it applies to our own institutions. I don't think we are going to be able to eliminate the problems that exist for this particular group, and that's really too bad, but at least we can help the process along, I think. Having said that, and I think there are enough concerns here and enough immediate issues that the subcommittee is more than justifiable. We do have a situation where Healthy Saanich is very much an umbrella group, and you know, we could see a lot of people with a particular issue in society coming forward with requests. Homelessness, affordable housing, people with disability, visual minorities, those with addictions, those suffering with domestic violence or violence against women, and on it goes. One of the strategies I have used in the past in committees, and I don't think it would be one I would have chosen here, given the immediacy and the extent of the problem, but when these kinds of things or issues have come up that demand additional study and additional participation, sometimes what I've done is to establish informal working groups. And there's nothing to restrict a committee from establishing an informal working group. I would attend it. Members of the committee who wish to be on it, of the committee I was chairing, would participate on a voluntary basis, and we would invite others to come and hold a kind of informal workshops, something of that nature, to bring information back to the existing committee. So that's something that, for other situations if they arise, might be an answer for Councillor Plant that's workable. But in this case, I think we need to go beyond that. Thank you.
Councillor Plant?
If I may, and just a point of privilege, just not to be contradictory to Councillor Dermott, but you are inaccurate as per our policy. Anytime we establish a informal working group, and that's the word, informal work group, with without having membership from the committee, we must seek council approval. So that's why I'm here. I would have likely done it otherwise had that been an option.
Okay, I guess I might have been in violation in other years.
That's why it's here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a point of privilege, but thanks for that clarification. Councilor Workland?
Thanks very much. I too would like to thank the group that came out tonight. I heard you, and I appreciate you sharing with us where you're coming from and what your life is like in our community. I guess I've always tried to keep life fairly simple and complicated, and living in a community shouldn't be that complicated. And I guess I go back to two words: love and respect each other in our communities. And I believe that's the area where we have to build on. We can have committees, we can have all those things, but teaching and encouraging each other to love and respect each other where you're at and where we're at goes a long ways. Probably one comment that a number of you made that caused me some concern: we don't have a voice. And I'd like to think that whether it's your group that's here tonight or another group out there, I believe we have a fair selection of committees, advisory committees of council, that people in our community can approach. And I would hope that they are approachable. And I would hope that you, through the Healthy Saanich, would feel that you can approach Healthy Saanich, who in turn can approach